Good morning, Kenneth. Good morning.
What are we going to learn about?
We're learning about superheroes.
Or we're going to learn about photosynthesis. So in our first video on energy, we're going to look at photosynthesis. We're going to look at what it does as a way of fixing carbon dioxide into a useful form, and we're going to outline basically the role of photosynthesis in the production of high energy carbohydrates and what that means for us with organic chemistry. Okay, so what's the point? The point is that by the end of this, you should not be this bear, and you should only be using words that you understand in chemistry. By the end, you should be able to write word equations and symbol equations that show the reactants and products, that's right, of photosynthesis.
It's got legs, but not arms.
The bear doesn't have any arms?
No.
Is he armless?
No.
He's a bear, okay. You should be able to understand the importance of photosynthesis as an endothermic reaction, and that's key. Max, stop it. And you should be able to understand the terms organic chemistry with several examples. Oh, Max is going away. Alrighty, so photosynthesis. Basically, the word itself means light and to make, so it's a Greek word. And we go over here, photo meaning light, synthesis meaning to make. The reactants, or raw materials, are carbon dioxide as a gas and water as a liquid. The catalysts, though, are the solar energy that is absorbed by a green pigment called chlorophyll. This gives the CO2 and H2O the energy to combine. So if it's drawing energy in from the environment, we already know one thing about this type of reaction. So the products are glucose, that's this here, this C6H12O6, and that should be aqueous, by the way, it shouldn't be a gas, that's it. That's aqueous, and oxygen. Alright, so glucose is a sugar that can be used by both plants and animals. As a sugar, we're going to use the word saccharide, which doesn't appear here. You know what? I think it does appear on a page in a couple of minutes. Alright, so here's our formula. Here is our balanced formula. It is 6 carbon dioxides plus 6 waters gives us 6 glucose, again, that should be aqueous, and 6 oxygens. Okay? Now, it's an endothermic reaction. This means 1 mole of glucose takes up 28 kilojoules to produce. Alright, so the enthalpy for photosynthesis in that case, because it's endothermic, which means our enthalpy is positive, is 2800 kilojoules per mole. Alright, so organic chemistry, what is it? It's basically chemistry comprised of molecules that are mostly comprised of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and sometimes nitrogen, particularly proteins. But it's the chemistry of organic or living things. So it deals largely with carbohydrates, which are compounds made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now, we call these high-energy compounds as they liberate large amounts of stored energy when they're reacting with oxygen. When something is reacting with oxygen in this kind of way, we tend to say it's combusting. These can be represented by the formula C6H2O, and what this means is, particularly with something like glucose, you've got your carbons there, but your hydrogen and oxygen is often fixed in a ratio of 2 hydrogens to 1 oxygen. And that's because it comes from reacting carbon dioxide with water. Now, what you might notice is that you've still got those O2s at the end, so you've got CO2 plus the water, and sorry, CH2O in that ratio with plus oxygen. So this actually makes sense if it's water plus CO2. This is hard without a mouse. You can see that there's the C, the one of, and the oxygen. Alright. So it includes glucose, cellulose, sucrose, starch, dextrose, and all these other ones. Carbohydrates from photosynthesis, in particular. Glucose and sucrose. Sucrose is two glucoses put together. They are water soluble. This means they can be transported around the plant. Cellulose, which is insoluble, is a polymer of glucose and is used to make cell walls. Starch is also a polymer of glucose, also insoluble to a point, and is used to store energy. It's the plant's fat cells. So animals have fat cells, plants have starch. All right. So these are our structural formulas for a couple of simple carbohydrates and a complex one. So what we have is we have monosaccharide glucose. Okay, so that's glucose. That's the product. And that one there, I think, is the beta form. One way to think about this is that each one of these corners here is a carbon, and they should all have an extra line coming off so that there's 4 bonds, and that extra line off all of them, so that it's joined to 4 things, is a hydrogen. Anyway, so if you draw that one with a couple of hydrogens off it, all will be gold. Yes, this is the beta form. There is an alpha form in which this H here and this OH are switched around. Then we have disaccharides, which are, as we said, are two sugars joined together. And you can see what they've done is this hydrogen here has been replaced with this entire molecule. So if we look at our polysaccharides, they all look like this. So a polysaccharide is just lots and lots of glucoses stuck together. Now the difference is starch and cellulose. So you can see that one is a straight chain and the other one is an alternating chain where the extra oxygen, hydrogen, we'll get into what they are later on. But this group here is alternating up top, down bottom, up top, down bottom. And that gives cellulose's structure. Alright, so respiration, what is it? Most organisms carry out combustion of glucose, so literally you're burning glucose in your cells to produce energy. This changes the chemical energy of glucose into other forms such as kinetic and heat. So this is why we use it for our cells. It allows us to move and stay warm as mammals, all sorts of stuff. Now, a good way to think about this is that as a mammal, because it produces heat energy, we use a lot more than a lizard. A lizard's cold-blooded, doesn't need to heat its body up. So we actually have a much, much higher energy requirement for our body size. And it's shown by the equation. Again, this should be aqueous. I don't know what happened when I made this. C6H12O6, that's glucose, plus oxygen, 6 oxygens, gives you carbon dioxide and H2O. This is the carbon dioxide we breathe out. It doesn't come from the air and then straight back out. It comes from our cells, it gets used up, transported around our blood, and pumped out through our lungs. This is an exothermic reaction. We know this because it changes glucose into kinetic and heat energy, which means it releases energy. And it releases 1 mole of glucose. 1 mole of glucose releases 2,800 kilojoules. Now, this, law of conservation of energy, so it matches up. All right, so the enthalpy in this case will be minus 2,800 kilojoules per mole. All right, so that's it. We're good. We'll move on with a bit of the carbon cycle in class. And yeah, see you then.